Pritamrit presents Audiobook Autobiography of Pritam Das Katyal, Part 1. This autobiography was written by him during the years of 1970s. The narration is being done by Rajiv Katyal. On 1st January 1931, in Multan city of undivided India, Pritam Das was born. The chart of Katyal family and some other informations were shared with him by his father Shri Atam Prakash Katyal. The family came as refugees to the Indian side of Punjab at the time of partition. Page 1. It was on the day of 1st January 1931 that I was born in a Zamindar Hindu respectable family at Multan city, Mohalla Maharajanwala, inside Park Gate, Dunia Jandi, now in Pakistan. I was third child in the family and therefore my birth was liked very much. This was due to shortage of manpower and population. The British rule was in vogue at that time and persons in government service were considered to be more respectable as compared to those in business and other private sectors. There was also a preference for persons of Zamindar families in government employment. Fortunately, I happened to come up in such a family. My father, Shri Atam Prakash Katyal, was holding the post of a reader to the Deputy Commissioner, who used to be a British national. Although his salary was meagre, his place in society was considered to be respectful, more particularly because he was a zamindar holding about 50 acres of agricultural land in Tehsil Shujabad district Multan. I am told by my father that our forefathers had migrated from Peshawar, which is now in Pakistan. My great-great-grandfather, along with his brother, migrated to Multan city on account of acute tyranny and molestation by the Muslim community. When there was Sikh rule in Punjab, Diwan Savanmal was the governor of Multan and Maharaja Ranjit Singh was ruler of the whole Punjab. Page 2. It is said that most of Katyal families settled in Jhang district, but a few families, in which my forefathers were one, settled in Multan district. A piece of land was purchased by him which turned to be a permanent place of our living for our next generation. It was customary at that time that home once made by forefathers was like to be retained at all costs by the successors. My great-grandfather Raja Kudanmal was gifted 50 acres of agricultural land in Tehsil Shujabad, district Multan, by the then governor Diwan Savanmal in token of his good services having rendered to the governor. Our great grandfather Lala Parasram was known to be a saintly type man. He was not doing any regular profession for meeting with the family needs, but the income from agricultural land being held by him was a constant source of their livelihood. He was very fond of pilgrimage and every year used to visit one place or the other. In the absence of any means of transportation, he, in the company of friends and relatives, used to walk miles together or visiting religious places like Hardwar. It is said that he was generally out of his town and away from his family for about 6 months in a year and was all the time leading a carefree life but devoted to religion and God. By chance, the agricultural land, having been inherited by him, was a source of income to his family left behind. The output of the land was considered to be fairly substantial and sufficient to meet with all requirements. He died at the middle age of 40 years, leaving the entire burden on his wife, who with great difficulties brought up his two sons and three daughters. Page 3. My father, being the eldest male member, had to undertake the entire burden when he grew up. He passed matriculation examination, which was considered to be sufficient for recognizing a man to be fairly literate and to secure a government job. Fortunately, he got government employment immediately after passing matriculation examination and was able to bring up his other family members. He does not remember to have seen his father in his awareness and had to shoulder all the responsibilities with regard to the education, marriages, and other requirements of his younger brother and three sisters. Although his income was not sufficient to meet with all his burden, he somehow or the other, with the advice, guidance of his mother, was able to stand by. At that time, girls were hardly available for marriages, and boys had to wait long or bargain their sisters for getting a wife. My father could bargain his marriage with a girl of a rich family who were running a big business. But whatever dowry was received, the same was returned in exchange of the marriage of his cousin's sister, who was married back to that family's son. The hard days went on, and he was able to marry all his three sisters and one brother. In the meantime, his eldest married sister expired, and the other was widowed, who came back to his house, her in laws having declined to keep her. Page 4. By and by, the whole responsibilities were overcome, and again my father was bestowed with four sons and four daughters. One can imagine the responsibilities of such a large family on only one man. At that time, the women were the home pride and therefore could not be added to stand up on their own legs and help in earning any means of livelihood. Parda was customary, but it was more prevalent in Muslim families as compared to Hindus. All the same, he could bring up his family and get on with the society. His younger brother could be educated up to middle class, and with a dispensing course, he was able to get a job of dispenser in a municipal dispensary. About immediately after that, he was married and therefore could be self sufficient. The two houses left by forefathers were divided by them. The bigger house came to my father's side, who paid some compensation to his younger brother in lieu thereof. So both started with their married lives, and the widowed sister remained with my father, being the oldest male member. Both of them renovated their houses so as to make them worth living. Our house was two-storied, all having remained with us. It was let off only when my father was transferred to Khanewal Tehsil and a few other places. Although there was a beginning of scientific comforts having been provided in some houses there, no electricity or fans were fitted in our house. As far as I could imagine, it was not due to lack of financial aspect, but my father having not believing in such amenities and considering the same to be risky, and he was not inclined for the same. Page 5. To say something about Multan city, my family's hometown, it may be added that it was an ancient town inhabited since the rule of Diwan Mul Raj. After domination of British, it spread like a big town with a big cantonment. In all, there was a population of nearly 2 lakhs, out of which about two-thirds with Muslims and remaining with Hindus. Inside walls of the city, nearly 90% of the population was Hindus, and outside the walls, there were almost all Muslims, except a few isolated Hindu families. The cantonment area was, however, a multiple of all types of communities, including dominating British. The major business and establishments were owned there by Hindus, and Muslims were a poorer community. Education was not so common, and we could hardly find persons having been educated up to graduation or post graduation. Metric 10th standard was, however, gradually becoming approachable to the families, but there were still the majority who had yet to develop their thoughts to feel the urgency of educating their children. A few cinemas and other curricular activities such as festivals, games, marriages were the source of recreations. Life in a nutshell was very simple, but purity of diet, food, and thoughts and hospitality was noteworthy. My life started in the above mentioned calamities and environments. I was brought up in the joint Hindu family. The time passed and I started going to school known as Jandi Dunia Primary School. It was located at a distance of about a mile from our house, but due to shortage of schools, I had no other alternative. Page 6. I am told that my uncle Lala Das Katyal used to take a little more interest towards my education and inquired from time to time about my progress from the school. I still remember my headmaster Lala Lal with turban and a salwar and a stick in his hand. Later, I was shifted to DAV Middle School situated outside Haram Gate, which was comparatively spacious and well staffed. Urdu was all along the dominating language, but Hindi and Sanskrit were also taught as secondary subjects. I remember to have learnt Urdu as the prime subject. Even I was taught Persian for a year or two, but subsequently, when I was promoted to middle level class, I shifted to Hindi and Sanskrit. The days passed and I passed middle examination and was admitted to DAV High School, which was situated far outside the city walls at a distance of nearly 3 miles. I remember to have gone there daily on foot. As customary there, I used to wear shirt with white pajama or a salwar and sometimes a cap on the head also. I passed my matriculation examination in the year 1946 from Punjab University and was admitted to DAV College, which was also situated at an equal distance of about 3 miles. My dress changed to some extent and I became accustomed mostly to a cotton pant with a cap or hat on head, particularly in summer season. Knicker or shorts, salwar or pajama was not a forgotten one, and sometimes I used to wear these also. The facility of cycle was, however, provided to me since I was grown up. Page 7. One day I, in the company of my nearest colleague friend named Chaman was returning by my cycle from college. Both of us fell down on the roadside, and in the meantime, two bullocks cart crossed over my left arm, which was half fractured. A military man came to my rescue and he brought me along with my cycle to my house. Fearing that he may have to face some unpleasant or threatening words, my colleague fled away from there. Perhaps he felt himself to be guilty of having been fallen due to his mistake of running the cycles as we were driving our respective cycles shoulder to shoulder, and I, being on the right side of the road, fell down. Fortunately, my uncle happened to be a dispenser in the local municipal hospital, and he took me to that doctor, and on his advice I was taken to civil hospital where my wounds and fractures were aided medically. After about 4 months' time, the plaster on my arm was removed and I could have a sigh of relief. I remember to have a reasonably vast and good friendly circle, say about a dozen mohalla friends and a number of school friends. Playing with each other different games after school hours was a continuous process. Group conflicts and rivalries were also a natural phenomenon. In the evening, our usual routine was to go to cantonment where we used to play badminton. I was quite a good player of badminton, but football and cricket were also not unfamiliar to me. I also used to do swimming in a pool, although prevented by parents too often. Page 8. Perhaps in our mohalla I was amongst a very few boys who had passed matriculation examination for the first time, and therefore I was liked by my parents and relatives in this direction. My habits in general were simple, and I was also not keen to wear any special or costly dresses and garments. My elder brother, however, was keen for particular dresses, and somehow or the other, parents used to satisfy his demands. There were very few boys, what to talk of girls, who used to join college as education was not so common and considered to be essential. People were so established in earning their livelihood that they did not bother to impart education to their children. Education up to the level of primary was considered sufficient. Then their financial standing was not so much that most of them could afford to go beyond that. The atmosphere in college was general cordial, and boys, although not very deeply educated in various subjects, remained devoted to their studies. Recreation facilities were provided, games were also encouraged, and participation in various tournaments were a common affair. I remember to have been chosen for a captainship in ring team and membership in badminton and volleyball. Once I was awarded prize in the annual tournament for my best performance as a captain in ring team, and I was given a certificate to that effect by a committee which I still preserve. In all, there were two colleges, one co-education being run by government and the other by a DAV committee where I was a student. The latter was considered to be good and reputed college. Page 9. The days went on when my first year 11th class examination came near, and we concentrated much towards studies and appeared in the final examinations. But before our result, political events changed. Bad elements were instigated by politically motivated people. Demonstrations and slogans of freedom movement were shadowed everywhere in the country. British rule, which had been in existence for more than a decade, was shaken. Leaders all over the country demanded for a free India, and the movement came to its climax that it became difficult for the British dominants to control the atmosphere, and they had to yield to the demand. Meetings were held amongst leaders of various committees, but no agreed decision could come out. Ultimately, it was decided to partition the country into two parts on the basis of population of Muslims and Hindus, which is now known as Pakistan and India. This partition came out as both the communities could not come to an agreed settlement, and British people also wanted such a division so that it may lead to continuous conflicts between the two, and they could again intervene and continue to be the rulers. But wisdom prevailed between the two, and they could control their own affairs themselves. At that time, communal riots spread and the whole law and order was disturbed. Gundaism, lootings, and molestation was very common. Even the student community was instigated, and they carried processions throughout the city demanding for a free India. On account of breakdown of law and order, there was so much panic that people were afraid of coming out of their houses. Page 10. I remember to have joined our student procession, and when it entered into the city walls, it was disturbed by the vested interested people, and it turned into a scene of riots between Hindus and Muslims. All students ran up for their rescue, and some of us were badly injured. I was able to take shelter in the nearby house of my eldest sister. As Muslim community was dominant there, and that area came to the side of Pakistan, Hindus started packing and disposing of their goods and households so that they could leave their place, as it had been decided to partition the country and exchange the population on the basis of religion. However, willing persons could stay at their places, but who would remain in such a panicky atmosphere where all the time communal riots followed by fear amongst people was prevalent? About 90% of the Hindus migrated to India and left their homes. We were also the same victims. Let me narrate how we reached India under tyranny and fear of the dominant Muslim community. It was decided by the government that passes would be issued to the persons required to be migrated, and government servants will get priority in this regard. So, although a pass was issued to my father, being a government servant, the same proved to be of no use, as in the meantime such a system was discontinued and people began to leave their homes on first come, first leave basis. In other words, people who were able to reach the place of train or other transportation used to be picked up, as lot of people used to try their luck for getting a place into the train, and it became impossible to accommodate all of them. It was decided to set up camps where people could come and stay after leaving their homes, and from where they could get into the trains in batches. Page 11. Our families also moved into a campus which was, of course, guarded by army to avoid any communal riots. I remember we had to wait in that military guarded camp for more than a month's time when it became possible to get into the train. We had carried all our little belongings and luggage ourselves, and fortunately, one servant who was very keen to go to India under our shadow helped us in picking up the heavy luggage and keeping the same in the train. Some luggage had to be kept on the roof of the train, and even some persons could get the space on the roof of the train. The train became so congested and suffocated with the stream of people that the little children used to cry, as outside sunshine and open air was not approaching them. Even for grown up persons, it was very inconvenient and like a jail. The train moved on, and after about 48 hours in such an inconvenient position, we reached at the India border town known as Wagha, under the protection of Indian army who had been deputed to accompany such trains for migrating the Hindu population. At the said border, we were greeted by hundreds of people and served with garlands, meals, and good wishes. The train left us at Jalandhar city during midnight when it was very cold and there was great smell of dead bodies having been lying around the area on account of continued communal riots. Trains were being exchanged between the so called two countries India and Pakistan. Muslims in India going to Pakistan and Hindus coming to India.